Jumping right along to 3A. No surprise here. Metamora, number one. Tyler Mason, Matt Zobrist, and they got a transfer from PND. Cooper Cook, 6'8", senior.
They've really earned the right to one of the upper echelon of 3A. Defeated Simeon down at state 2 years in a row. Simeon probably shouldn't even have been 3A. That's neither here nor there. I think this team was ranked in the max preps list for the top 25 list that they put out. A really impressive group. Tyler Mason is. I love watching that kid play. Over the summer, he's flying through the lane off of a missed shot, and he tries to dunk a miss and it doesn't end up making the dunk. But from a 6'1" kid, I mean, he was certainly high enough. I think he just overshot the dunk a little bit. And it's just he's like a microwave scorer. You get him going off the ball screens, he can hit threes, he can get to the rim, and then you add in an Iowa commit and Cooper Cook. They're an easy number one for 3A.
Mount Carmel from Chicago checks in at number two. Angelo Saravino, Lee Marks, Grant Best, and then they got a transfer. No, mister.
Yeah, Sheravino made I guess had a really nice summer. Kind of blew up among the AAU circuit, picking up a lot of Division I offers. Noah Mister came over late from Kenwood, so I'm not certain on his eligibility right away. Cameron Thomas comes back. He was there. He left the state. Now he's back. Get the kid from Stevenson, right? The Christian
Right.
Iramovich. So on paper they look really good on paper. I'm expecting them to be really good on the court as well. The top 4 or 5 teams in the Catholic League Blue are as good as any other 5 teams in the state. Those teams are just really good.
That'll be a really fun conference to watch this year. Number three, we've got Richwards out of Peoria, and they've got a probably one of the biggest transfers of them all, Lathan Somerville, 6'10" senior.
Yep, he was at PND and then COVID hit and he didn't want to not play school or play basketball, so he transferred to some school in Atlanta, I think. Anyway, he's back at Richwoods. He's 6'10", but he does things that 6'10" kids normally don't do. He can grab a rebound, he can push it up, he can dunk on you, he can spot up for a three, he can run an offense. And with the kids they have coming back, they only lost like 5 or 6 games last year. They're in the Pekin Holiday Tournament, which has like 8 or 9 really good teams, and I'm excited for that tournament again. You could have made an argument that they were number two. I don't know if you could have made an argument that they're number one, but Rich Woods certainly deserving of number three.
Speaking of transfers, number four, we've got Thornton, the big man, Morez Johnson, committed to Illinois, 6'9" senior, along with Isaiah Green and Mayo Swansea, to name a few.
Yep, the Wildcats, they don't return any starters from last year, but that's okay. They won the transfer portal. I don't know how it's going to go right away, which is kind of like a cliche thing to say, but I really don't know how it's going to go. I'm going to see they play Richwoods at Boylan next Friday. I'll be there. And that's like one of the marquee games in the entire season. I'm really excited for that game. They play Metamora down at Highland. They're in the One Sides Collide, and they're playing in the marquee game there against Bennett. They play Kenwood at the Chicago Elite Classic. They're in like 10 shootouts, which is I think the most I've ever seen on a schedule. They play HF late January. They'll be fine. I almost wish they were 4A, but they're 3A. Ty Streets has put together a nice group.
That's a fun gym to go to as well. DePaul Prep is 2A last year, got bumped up to 3 after winning state, and they return a ton. Jalen McElroy is 6'7", Rob Walls, PJ Chambers. Should be a good squad for the Rams.
It wouldn't surprise me if they were 4A in 2 years, because they're back up to 3A because of the enrollment. But if they could get the success factor bump up also because they're a private school, and they could certainly get to state 2 years in 3A. The northern suburb sectional, super sectional isn't traditionally strong, and that's where they're going to fit into. Iggy got bumped up to 4A, and DePaul Prep's going to backfill their void with the Catholic League power. Tom Kleinschmidt is one of the best coaches in the state. If the listeners didn't know that, it's time that they did know that. His game prep, the way that he conducts himself, the way that he's built this program, he doesn't do it with transfers. He gets kids early. He keeps them for the most part. They just did have a kid move out. But they guard as hard as anyone in the state, and they're not afraid of anybody.
And they seem to have played a really nice schedule last year in that Catholic League, especially with McElroy and Peyton Kamen's the other kid that transferred out. He was hurt for a good portion of the year, and they still played really, really tough. Number 6, East St. Louis, Taylor Powell, Davis Bynum. They lost a lot from last year, but they're still up here.
It may be a little high compared to some of the teams below them may have better records. They're in a safe part of the state because there's not a whole lot of really good 3A schools down there. There's some that could knock them off, but since they've been 3A, and they've been 3A now since about 17 or 18. I mean, they've been in that super sectional more times than they have not been in that super sectional. Mark Chambers is almost a perfect fit for this Flyer program. And that may sound a little sacrilegious because he was a Lincoln grad. He's given them stability. They went through a lot of coaching changes before he got there. Some of the coaches they ran out of town. Some of them, it was a mess. And he's won a state title with them. He's been close. They were beating Metamora for a majority of that game this season in that semifinal, and Metamora just kind of ground them out. They have enough raw talent, and they win the transfer portal every year, and there's nothing wrong with that because if IHSA says you're cleared to play, then you're cleared to play. So I don't really care how many transfers you have or don't have.
More transfer talk here as we go into number 7, St. Lawrence. They picked up a couple big ones actually from the Aurora area. They've got Josh Pickett. He's from West Aurora. Bradley Stratton, good shooting guard from Marmion. And then they bring back 3 really good juniors, Khalil Jones, Zurich Johnson, Caleb Lindsay.
The 25 group was talked about early on. They were showing they were proving it on the court, and I was really excited to see if they had all stayed together, which has not been the case now because it just felt organic, and it would have been nice to see a group grow together with the same coach. All summer long, we didn't really know what this roster was going to look like. We thought they were going to get Noj Idrisitis. He was there for about a minute and a half and left. They had another guard leave. So tons of talent still, but I think we're all looking at this team as probably not what they could have been or should have been, but they're still really good. If they're not in the Catholic League blue, they're in the white for some reason, and I don't know why. They're going to win that division. They're still going to play teams in the blue and it's going to count as a conference game, but they're not going to get to play all those teams. Like they're not going to play Loyola. They're not going to play DePaul Prep. Anyway, you get my point. They're going to be, kind of wasting conference games away against some of the teams in the white, and there's a significant difference. That's why they have the divisions.
All right, moving right along. St. Pat's comes in at number 8. EJ Braylon.
Yeah, also in the Jack Tosh. It's kind of shameful we haven't even mentioned that tournament yet because most of these, Metamora's in there this year. That tournament's going to be really good, quickly becoming one of my favorite holiday tournaments, and it's really becoming one of the best tournaments in the entire state. St. Pat's, everybody for the most part coming back. They had a couple of transfers, and I'm interested to see how those transfers fit into this group. Some of them may be a lot more valuable than some of the others. But I think they're in like the battle for second and third in the East Suburban Catholic. Other people really like Marist. I like Marist. I just like Marist for next year. And then I really, we all like Bennett for winning that conference this year. But St. Pat's in that same postseason boat that they're always in. It's kind of a sleepy North Suburban Lake area, and you got to put some wins together, and they haven't been able to do that recently. A lot of promise for this group.
Hillcrest, the Hawks are in at number 9. It seems like out of all the teams we've been used to, it just seems like this team is not quite to the caliber, but hey, they're still in the top 10 and they're ready to roll. Adam Page, Jaquan Radcliffe, Makai Harris, Jaden Ingram.
Only one starter back. They've been losing the transfer battle of recent. I still think we all are going to expect them to win that South Suburban Conference. The sectional that they're going to feed into is going to be a bit of a bear. I think that's Thornton. It's going to be Kankakee, Marion Catholic, Evergreen Park, which did win the transfer portal this year. So, not a traditionally heavy favorite Hillcrest team. They're still going to win 20 games. They've won the conference like 29 out of the last 30 years. I still feel all right with them being where they're at.
Hyde Park is number 10. Darrell Baldwin is back, Aaron.
He left, and now he's back. Jermaine Benson, I think, is still there. Maurice Merritt, Messiah Gibson, Jalen Shelton. They got some size. They got tons of size. They're going to have the strength schedule that comes with playing in that Red South Central. They're in the Chicago Elite. They're in the Team Rose. They're going to play Richwoods down at the University of Illinois Springfield about 10 days before Christmas. Thought about going to that tournament. There's 4 games. One of them's a girls' game. I don't really feel like sitting through a girls' game. They're in the Big Dipper. Last couple years they've hosted a couple different shootouts in January. I think they're lined up to play Crete-Money and Lanphier in those events this year. Simeon got bumped up to 4A, so that was who they would usually have to run into in the sectional. Now you'd get Mount Carmel. I think Mount Carmel's who knocked them off last year. So they're going to win a regional. Feel pretty comfortable with that, and I think they could win that sectional. I'm just not going to favor them to.
Number 11 on the 3A rankings is Lanphier. They return Jaquan Holman, Shaughnessy Hatchett, Jesse Bates, lots of juniors. Strength of schedule doesn't look too bad. They open up their season at the Rich Township shootout against Whitney Young. Then they travel to Quincy to play Tinley Park, Chicago Phillips, and Quincy. They compete in the Pinkin Holiday Tournament, loaded field this year. They'll compete in the Central State 8. Should be right in the mix there with Decatur MacArthur. And then they've got some tough non-conference opponents in Peoria Manual, Peoria High, and then they wrap up the season with Normal on the 13th of February. Look for this team to be a real tough out come March. Checking in at number 12, we have the Lindblom Eagles out of the south side of Chicago, and they've got a superstar in 6'3" senior Jay Sean Stevenson. Eagles always have a tough conference schedule, competing in the Red South Central, Kenwood, Simeon, Curie. They'll compete in the Kankakee Holiday Tournament. Other notable non-conference games: Joliet West, Lincoln Way East at the Team Rose, Oswego East. They're competing in that rough public league tournament at the end of the year. Come postseason time, Mount Carmel, Hyde Park, Kankakee, Marian Catholic. Expect the Eagles to be a real force this year. The Eagles' nest, not regulation size, and unfortunately they can't host postseason play, but it gets really loud in there, and it's quite the place to be in a conference matchup. Next, we've got Decatur MacArthur. The Generals return Stevie Tatum, 6'2" senior. Sam Owens, a 6'2" senior. And they've got MJ Murphy, 5'11" senior. Last year, this group was really highly regarded, especially towards the end of the year. They won the Collinsville tournament last year. They open up their schedule at the Decatur Thanksgiving tournament. Bolingbrook, Peoria, Peoria Manual, some of the teams noted in that tournament. They've also got tough non-conference schedule. They've got Normal West on the 3rd of January, and they also compete in that Moline MLK shootout. They'll also be at the Wood River shootout on February 3rd, and then they wrap up the season against another 3A ranked team, Mount Zion. Come postseason time, they'll definitely be one of the front runners in that sectional. Next on our list is Mount Zion. The Braves bring back 6'2" junior Lincoln Coaster, Grant McCaddy, 6'3" senior, Sammy Driscoll, a junior, Gage Owens, a 6'7" senior, and J.C. Anderson, a 6'7" sophomore. Mount Zion will start their season at the Lincoln Thanksgiving tournament, and their non-conference schedule is okay. They compete at the Taylorville Holiday Tournament. Most likely will end up running into Sterling there towards the end, I would imagine. They've also got Teutopolis, Jacksonville, and Decatur MacArthur to finish out the year. They should be in the 20-win category, no doubt. Coming in at number 15, we've got the K's of Kankakee. They return Lorenz Walters, Eli Stipp, DeMonte May, Lincoln Williams, Cedric Terrell. They'll start their season out at the Christ the King Gladiator Classic, and then non-conference schedule, Champaign Centennial, Thornwood, Rich Township. They'll be at the Whitney Young Shootout on the 20th of January. They've got Pontiac at their own shootout on the 27th. That should be a fun 3A matchup. Bloom, Crete-Money, and they're also competing in the Evergreen Park Shootout on the 4th of February. And they'll host their own holiday tournament. Look for this team to be in another crowded 3A sectional. Coming in next, we've got De La Salle. Gary DeCesar returns Richard Lindsay, Charles Barnes, Morgan Travis, Remy Edwards, Bryant Hedrick. They'll open up their tournament with a combined St. Ignatius, De La Salle Thanksgiving tournament, the Windy City Classic, their first year. They'll also be on the road for quite a while. They're going to Kentucky. Looks like they've got a few other out-of-state tournaments, New York, New Jersey. So they'll be out of sight, out of mind for mid-part of the season. But then they hit the conference schedule hard come early January. Not too many local non-conference games, but they finish up the year on the 13th and the 16th of February against Kenwood and Marion Catholic. They'll also be competing in the Evergreen Park Shootout. Their sectional road should be favorable. Peyton, Westinghouse, Fenwick, Bulls College Prep. Expect them to make a deep run, win a regional, possibly get to a super sectional. Good year if you're a Meteors fan. Number 17, we have Marion Catholic. They'll return Zach Sharkey, a junior, and they've also got a senior, James Bullock. They'll start their season, as always, at the highly anticipated Chicago Heights Classic. Big game on the 22nd as they'll host Homewood Flossmoor. If you've never seen that game, I'd recommend checking it out. It's always a staple to start the year. Marion Catholic will have a tough road come postseason time as they're in an absolutely loaded sectional. This will be the first year that they will compete without Mike Taylor. Rick Romelli will step in as the new head coach for the Spartans. At number 18, we have the Rockets of Burlington Central. This was a team last year that got upset in the sectional final against Marmion. They lose a lot after Andrew Sharnowski departs, but they still have got a host of players that can do some damage. A 6'4 junior, Jake Johnson. Caden West is another junior. Miles Lowe is a 6'6 senior. They've also got a 6'10 senior, Aiden Wilson. They'll open up their season again at the Sycamore Thanksgiving tournament. They'll probably have to run into Yorkville in the semifinal there, and if they can get by them, they'll probably be facing Sterling. Conference-wise, looks like they should be in the front of a very average conference. Crystal Lake South, McHenry, Cary Grove, Jacobs should be the teams to watch there. Huntley will be another one. Not many non-conference. They'll host their own Martin Luther King tournament, and then they'll be participating in the Plano Holiday Tournament. I would anticipate them to be another favorite this year after winning that tournament last year. Postseason-wise, teams that might give them a tough time would be St. Francis, Wheaton Academy, Rockford Boyland. So it's a very favorable sectional for them to go and make a deep run in the postseason again. Next up, we've got the Morton Potters. They return Wes Goodman, Gus Regard, Evan Barlow, Brooks Newhoff. They'll compete early on in the Washington Tournament of Champions. Other non-conference games of note, they'll have Peoria High, Champaign Central, IVC, and they also have St. Joe Ogden on the 27th of January. Tough conference schedule for them. They'll probably be nipping at the heels of Metamora most of the way. They'll be in one of those loaded sectionals with Lanphier, MacArthur. I would expect at least another 20 wins out of the Potters, and it seems like they always surprise people. Checking in at number 20, we have Sterling, and they return a trio of seniors, Andre Claver, Carter Kantz, and Lucas Austin, a 6'6 senior. They'll start their season at the Sycamore Thanksgiving tournament. They should have a favorable road to get to the finals against, more likely than not, Burlington Central or Yorkville, and they'll be competing, as always, in the Western Big Six. Very tough conference schedule, as they'll have to compete against Moline, Rock Island, Quincy, United Township. Non-conference schedule, they'll have Rock Falls, the Augustana Shootout. More likely than not, Mount Zion in the very final days of the Taylorville Holiday Tournament. Their own MLK shootout they're doing. The other non-conference game includes DeKalb. 21 on this ranking, we have Mount Vernon, and they've got quite the senior in Devontae Nesbitt. They've also got a supporting cast of Ronald King, a 6'4 senior, Marlon Price, 6'2 junior. Rams will open up their season at the Stovetop Classic, schedule there against Triad, which should be an outstanding game. They'll also have Teutopolis, Heron. They'll also be at the Normal West Shootout on the 3rd of February. Mount Vernon's postseason run could be tricky as they run into Heron, Olney, Waterloo, possibly East St. Louis. Next up, we've got Deerfield at 22. The Warriors bring back some size They've got a 6'8 junior, Drew Rogers, a 6'8 sophomore, and Jacob Palick. And they've also got 5'11 junior, Aaron Peltz, 6-foot junior, Quinn Szymanski. Deerfield will start their season at the Grant Mundelein Thanksgiving Tournament this year in the Central Suburban League South after moving from the North, and they'll have a much tougher conference schedule against Evanston, New Trier, Glenbrook North, Glenbrook South, Maine South. Record may not be as gaudy as it was last year, but these guys will be battle-tested come postseason. Non-conference schedule includes Waukegan. They'll also compete in the Wheeling Holiday Tournament. As far as postseason goes, Deerfield should have a pretty good road to at least win a regional. Other teams they might have to compete against: Antioch, Carmel, Lake Forest, Niles Notre Dame, St. Pat's, St. Viator. I would expect Deerfield to win a regional this year. Number 23 on the 3A rankings, we have Centralia. Non-conference games for them will be at the Roxana Thanksgiving Tournament. They'll also be competing in their own holiday tournament, where they're always a tough out. Other non-conference games include Bree Central, Mattoon, and they return Cruz Harlan, a 5'9 senior, Daryl Jones, 5'8 senior, Dustin Collins, a 6'5 junior, and they've also got a sophomore, Devin Meyer. This team can always shoot it. They know how to score. A regional for the Orphans this year would be a good goal, and if they can make a deep run in the sectional, I would not be surprised. All it takes is one good night. Coming in at 24, the Rail Splitters of Lincoln, and this is a fast, athletic team, headlined by Keon Carson, Trey Schilling, Aiden Gowen, and Drew Hayes. Lincoln will open up at their Thanksgiving tournament. Big game for them is on the 22nd against Mount Zion. They've also got Quincy, Bloomington, East Peoria, Champaign Central as other non-conference games. Rock Island on the 20th of January. They'll be in one of those loaded sectionals. At number 25, promotion to 3A, the Pontiac Indians. And they bring back a real fun trio in Riley Weber, Henry Brummel, Kerr Bauman. These guys can score, they can play fast-paced, they can slow it down, and they're a real flashy, fun group. They'll have a tough conference schedule with Bloomington Central Catholic, St. Joe Ogden, Prairie Central, IVC, Monticello, St. Thomas More. These guys will be battle-tested, and obviously they always compete in that very strong field at the Pontiac Holiday Tournament. They'll open the year at the Ottawa Thanksgiving Tournament, where they have a third game against Princeton on the 24th of November. They're a team, if you let them get hot, they are really tough to shut down. Look forward for another fun season if you're an Indians fan. And that'll conclude the 3A field.